guys, welcome to episode 2 of our Youth Pastors or Pastors 2 podcast. Uh, as Jeremy said in episode 1.5, things weren't really in a good spot last week. We had planned on trying to sneak one uh, in between certain situations that were going on. And if you haven't heard, my wife's mom passed away last Wednesday. She 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 had cancer for a couple of years, and finally, it just kind of it's just a weird situation. It happened so fast that one day she was fine, and then the next, it was just like it was just like that. And they said that was typical with the kind of cancer she had, and uh, yeah. So Jeremy stepped in and just did his 1.5 because we wanted to put something out there to make sure that you knew that, hey, we haven't forgot about you. We haven't, uh, we just kind of gave up after for one episode, and that's not the truth. We're actually working on things behind the scenes to update, and I hope to have the new logo, official logo, on this video.
That's the way you told them?
Oh, was it? Yeah. Well, okay, there you go. That we have a new logo that, uh, hot off the press, probably 4 hours old, that we just got in, and we'll add that to the video. But yeah, so if
So somehow I missed a phone call from Jacob, actually two phone calls, and I get this text and it's like, you got to call me. And I was like, and it was like about the podcast. I was like, okay. And he's like, okay. And we're FaceTiming each other. We're looking at each other. He goes, now I want to see your reaction. I'm going to send you. It's like, yes, it's awesome.
to be fair, I did call him twice, and then I called his wife. I don't know if she told you that. I did call your wife.
Why did Jacob call me? I was like, you've got to see this.
And then he called me back, but we were at a like a friend's birthday party type thing, and we were right in the middle of prayer, and he just kept calling and calling. Then he FaceTime, and I was like, amen, and then ran outside. So I'm shocked how well it turned out, and how fast, because I think I started talking to this guy uh
A week
Thursday.
ago. A
Yeah,
week ago? Yeah.
about Thursday of last week. So it was, yeah, and just all the stuff that came with it, it's awesome. And Jeremy hasn't even seen the rest of them. He just saw the main one. So yeah, last week was a pretty tough week for my family, and I mean, I guess Amanda and her family, and she's my family. So uh yeah, so again, Jeremy, thank you for your 1.5, trying to get that something out there uh to do. But that's why we're not having a guest this week, is because one, we didn't really know what the so she passed away on Wednesday of last week, so we really haven't really known what was going to happen leading up to whenever. And then Jeremy decides to go on vacation. To be fair, it is spring break, uh so I can't hold it against him. So if you can't tell by the picture in the back, uh he's on vacation. So
I am not at home.
yeah. And so, but everybody needs a vacation. So that's why we don't have a guest this week, but we are going to have one next week. We have multiple people email us, which is great. And I was actually pretty worried that people wouldn't. And the fact that there's like at least four or
Oh
five,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's great. And we'll be in contact with them, hopefully starting tomorrow, to try to line up a perfect day for them to record. And to be fair, we're just starting this out, so we're still trying to figure out the best time uh to do it, and just kind of get in a routine of figuring it out. Because obviously I'm not in my office, I'm actually on my couch. uh After last week, I went and picked up all my stuff from my office, just because you just didn't know how the week was going to go. So now I'm set up in my living room, and uh
Looks good. I mean,
yeah, I mean, if you saw the other side of the camera where all my wedding stuff is piled up, then that's a whole different ball game. But you know,
That's right. You're getting married in like what, 2 weeks?
A week. It's a week from this weekend.
A week from this weekend. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be there. I'll be there. I'll be
Hopefully.
there. Yeah. No, there's no doubt. I'm gonna be there. Is this like do you call this like do you have a name for it like wedding 2.0 or like wedding like part two or is there a name for it?
Uh,
I mean I've only married been like done like one wedding with my wife, so
well, I guess because how would I call it? I just call it the wedding that confirms it, I guess. But because of COVID, we got married in September. It was family only and wedding party, which turned out to be really good, and I
oh
enjoyed it,
yeah.
which was the kind of wedding I wanted. But because of our venue not giving our money back, we are continuously going back and doing it again, big DJ and all that stuff on March 27th, which is the kind of wedding she wanted. So it's like, yeah, it's a headache. It's like
It's like a his and hers, right?
yeah, and it's not. I can't say a headache because it's not that bad, but there's a lot that goes into weddings, and when you do two of them, there's a lot. So, but I think it'd be worth it,
Oh
and
yeah.
we get to
But
get dressed up this time around.
and you're gonna get to have more family and friends there that are gonna get to be a part of it. So
Yeah, and we were worried about capacity, and because of our great governor, Abbott has decided that everything should be open up to 100%. So we do get to have all this family and friends and just everybody that we invited. So
yeah.
and I can't wait till you see my cake, my groom's cake.
Yeah.
It's gonna be sick.
I'm looking forward to it. It's not a picture of me, is it?
No, it's it's a Houston Astros cake.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be nice. That'll be
Uh,
nice.
Crystal's making it.
Oh man, she does wonderful work.
Yeah.
Wonderful
So
work. Wonderful work. That's a free plug. A free plug. But
yeah, yeah.
we didn't give you your information, so
If you know Crystal from Elgin, she does cakes, but that's all I'm gonna give you. So uh
there you go. There you go. Well, before your mother-in-law passed away, you had a big weekend, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, we did our disciple now, and I would it was a tough weekend. I could say that much, and not because of D now, but because of the the sad news of what was about to happen. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I would consider Disciple Now our first major event in person since COVID. Because not last summer, but last spring when we did Disciple Now, the week after we did Disciple Now, that's when everything shut down. So
That's right.
we had a pretty good Disciple Now, and then it was just like boom, everything online, and uh, I mean Jeremy was there. We did youth camp online, broadcast from the youth room while they all were at home. So to be able to have Disciple Now in person was a big step in where we've been. So
Getting back together and hanging out and having some fun, right?
oh yeah. So yeah. Um, so I guess I'll tell you a little about how we. I guess we'll start with the beginning of, and if you haven't figured out, that's what we're going to talk about today in our episode. Is Disciple Now and what we did, what worked and what didn't work, and all that stuff. So, I guess we can start with where we started.
In the beginning,
From the, hey, that is a good plug to what we talked about.
oh, look at there.
What day? What month? It was about 3 months ago. When I said, hey, so we do D now a little bit. I wouldn't say different, but we actually write and piece together all the sermons and the group discussions just based on what, like, I guess we collab together
Oh yeah.
with me it'd be Jeremy and I, and then this year's our speaker was Keith Kilpatrick from. Side note, I don't know if you ever noticed, but when I spell Keith Kilpatrick, I spell his last name Killapatrick
Oh,
because I thought it was funny, and then I realized no one noticed that it said Killa, like Keith Killa.
yeah,
But
yeah.
anyways,
No,
so this year we did that, and what I don't remember last year's. What did we do last year?
last year.
Yeah,
Uh, uh, I should know this.
no. Oh, it was no, that was this year.
Hands of Love. So the
That
theme this year was Hands of Love, and last
yeah.
year it was why
How,
do
oh great God, the yeah, it was the
oh great
oh great love of God, something like that. It was, but if you haven't figured that, well, and then this year was Hands of Love, and if you don't see a pattern, those are two separate David Crowder songs. And I was driving home from work, and I was like, listening. And if you don't know this, uh, me and David Crowder are best friends without him knowing it. Uh, he he has a so we have a Christmas tree in the youth room that's been up there since. So I we put up a chalkboard wall, and the first Christmas party we had with the chalkboard wall, I drew a Christmas tree with chalk, and on top of the Christmas tree is a picture of David Crowder's head. And I did that as a joke, but when I went to erase it, all the students was like, no. So it's been like 5 years and it's still up there. And even when we just remodeled last year right before COVID hit, and I was like, we still want this, and they still want the tree up there. So that tells you how much Crowder is part of what we do. But I was listening to Crowder coming home from work, and I was like, Hands of Love. That's and the lyrics. I don't have the lyrics in front of me, but God created us for a reason with his hands of love.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, that's a good theme for a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I texted Jeremy. I was like, hey, we got to do this. And then Jeremy wrote the sermon outlines, and I guess I'll let you describe how you went through that process.
Yeah, well, and in the lyrics, it's got the song that we're all familiar with. He's got the whole wide world in his hands, and you play that in your head, you just think about God is in control of everything, right? And from a writing perspective, as we months and months before D Now, we come up with with this material. That way it's almost ingrained in all of us, right? It's ingrained in the leadership, and we know what's going to be taught, what the goals are, what the expectations are, and what the kind of the key points that we want them to take away from the disciple now. And so as the first thing I do is I sit down and I listen to the song a couple times, and then I read the lyrics. And because if I don't catch it when I'm listening, I'm definitely going to catch it when I read it, right?
Yeah.
And then listen to it throughout the writing process, and as God just really spoke, I just thought of four things. I thought the beginning, the plan, the fall, and Jesus. And then that's we the format that Jacob has used for the last 6-7 years, is Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night, and Sunday morning, because it's Sunday morning. It's kind of like a D Now takeover worship service time. And so we lay it out in 4 parts, and so it just kind of builds, and it lays out, from in the beginning, God created the heavens and earth, and then the fall, right? That fall happened, man disobeyed, and we've been separated by God, but there was always a plan. And that was Saturday night, and then the plan was Jesus, and that was the final, the final blah. I just went blank here,
Yeah.
but the Sunday morning service all about Jesus, And so that's kind of from a writing angle how we come up with it, and then I toss it back to Jacob, and Jacob sits down and he writes all the talkback questions and the material for the leaders that they can do in small groups. And I think that's where a lot of the teasing out happens.
Yeah, and it worked really well.
Mm.
And Keith did a outstanding job. And something I'm going to work on, hopefully maybe this weekend, is that we did live broadcast all sessions, and but I need to take that, redo some of the things to like fix the sound and uh, all that stuff, and then I'm gonna put them back out because they were so good, and uh, Keith did a really good job, and chances are I'm going to ask him again to come back next year. But and he did. I mean, he took the, and he didn't complain about it. And some speakers, they're like, man, I want to do my own thing. Boom, I'm going to do like go off course of what we planned. But he took it. And you and Keith talked more about plan that than I communicated with him. I just know that he enjoyed it. He did a good job with it and used his personal life to portray, like put out what you wrote. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't talk about how great Keith did.
Well, just looking at what I called Keith and I said, look, I'm going to give you some bare bones, and you can flesh it out because I don't know your story. I mean, I don't know all your stories. I know some of your stories, but I don't know your stories. I don't know what God's going to speak to you about. These just the bare bones, just really the bullet points and some of the supporting scripture that I had felt like would be important to convey to the students. And I went back and read all of his illustrations. I was like, it's perfect. I didn't think about that video. He incorporated some videos that he wanted to show the students, and the illustrations that he just wrote out were just, I mean, so on point. He did such an excellent job.
Yeah, he used the Francis Chan video, and
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it 100 times, but the way he used it, I mean, it felt like I just seen it like for the first time.
That's cool.
And then he did the potassium cell thing that
Louis Giglio.
Louis Giglio uses, that it's in the shape of a cross. And I've never seen that until I watched it I watched it to put it on ProPresenter, and I was just like, wow, like that's like, yeah. So it worked really well. And I don't know if I told you, but it was good. And I think it started with what you were doing. And by listening to what God was telling you, and you basically put it on paper, and then Keith took it and ran with it. So
yeah, it's cool.
It worked really good. And even Sunday morning, when we do Sunday mornings, it's the church. It's all the church, not just the youth. So the church body really took a liking to what we talked about all week. And the cool thing with planning your own curriculum, I guess, is that for the first the last 6 weeks leading up to D Now, we actually broke down Genesis leading up to it. So they kind of had an idea of Genesis. And I mean, when I say break it down, we broke it down to like day by day, to the meaning behind certain things. And so they weren't like, oh, this is the same Genesis that you hear as a kid growing up. So and I think it got their attention because there's certain things that you don't hear about when you're when you hear the creations like story.
Yeah.
I think there's like this, I don't remember what it's called, but on like the third day or something, God created like this shield around the earth that's no longer no longer there anymore. And it's not the ozone layer or anything. It's just something, I have to look it up, but it's in the Bible because I read it. So it's not like I'm making it up, but it's in there. And that's, they skip over that part because he gets rid of it later on in Genesis. But and they got the excitement of that, because I'll be honest, most of the kids in our youth group are kind of nerdy, so the science part of certain things they really like. So
Yeah.
but yeah, that was each session had the discuss that we talked about. I mean, what Jeremy just said,
Mhm.
hands of love, and it tied in. So after so Friday night we did pizza, everybody's favorite pizza. And I'll say this, because of COVID, we did things a whole lot different than we usually do.
Mhm.
So uh, about 2 months ago, 2 months or a month ago, I emailed all the parents that of kids that had already signed up. And usually the kitchen staff, like the kitchen committee, will do all the food prep and all that stuff. But because of COVID, I was like, how do I limit exposure to students? And I was like, oh, we'll just get the parents to do it, because parents are already with their kids are already with their other friends. It's just like a tiny circle that we just kept exposed. So
Mhm.
I was nervous about asking parents to do the food, because that on Saturday mostly that's a lot of work. But they stepped up and they did it. Friday night, always pizza. Every youth minister does pizza. It's just, if pizza's not in your diet, then you're not doing ministry right. So we did that in the session, and I guess the band was, oh, I couldn't even. Every year they just get. It seemed like they get better.
Mhm.
And if you're in Texas and you're looking for a worship band, um, Garrett Gardner Band is the way to go. Uh, there's so
And there's no D in that. That's Garner, not Gardner.
yeah, that's another joke I do. Uh, he hates it. So if it's unofficial business, like like a check or taxes or whatever, I always spell his name Gardner, and he hates it, and I do it on purpose, and it's funny to everybody else but him. But Garrett Gardner Band, uh, he's out of Houston right now. He leads worship out at Iron. What is it?
Copperfield.
Copperfield. That's Morgan.
Morgan's of the Iron Church or something.
Yeah.
Iron Fist or something.
I don't think it's Iron Fist, but yeah, he's in Houston leading worship. He does worship up there. And there's a bunch of different guys. Daniel out of Brackenridge, Texas, he leads worship at FBC there. Then Morgan, I don't know if he would come every time, but he's out of he's in Colorado doing
AVL.
something. He's doing something up there with the church.
It is Flat Irons. I
Flat
remember.
Irons.
Flat Irons.
He's part of the production team at Flat Irons in Colorado. And there's some other guys that FBC Bastrop, and then they come out of Austin. And all these guys come together, and I think Keith said this perfectly: is that there was 5 different churches represented with one band, and that's huge. He said that's huge because you just don't see that a lot. We always come together, and they do this thing multiple times throughout the year, and it's good. And Keith said it was good, and they are good. And they don't do it. It's not a concert to them. It's a ministry, and they're doing really good at it. And man, I love seeing them. And I want to get the audio fixed on our videos so everybody can see that. I mean, they are a talented group of people that no matter what you ask them from them, they'll perform and they make it happen, even if they leave your soundboard in a mess when they leave. Just kidding. That was Morgan. That was just one time. I fixed the problem. So anyways, we did our first session, and then we typically Friday night's kind of a slow night because Saturday's always the big day. But because of COVID, we actually ended up staying at the church. Students didn't go out to host homes; they stayed at the church. So I had to come up with this big game to kind of wipe them out. So a couple months ago during quarantine, I found I looked through different websites, and I found, and some of y'all might have used this before, but youth ministry to is it ministry to youth.com had this game, and every student played it at one point. Uh, it was Among Us, but in person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took that idea and I changed it a little bit because some of it was too much, and man, it was. I think the only thing if we do it again is that I would spread it out a little bit more. But because of the girls were staying in the Sunday school, our church is kind of shaped like a big. How would you describe it?
Well, it's kind of like an L. The
Yeah,
sanctuary is this way, and then there's a long hallway.
yeah,
And that main building.
And the girls were staying at the very end of the hallway, so I
Mhm.
wanted to make sure that dudes weren't going in there and doing dude things like,
Yeah,
So
you know.
we cut that section off, and then we spread out through the rest of the main building. But there was 10 different stations, and so that means there's some stations that were kind of like 10 feet from each other, and things got crowded in certain spots. And the one thing I noticed that was happening a lot was, instead of spreading out, and this might be because everything was so compact,
Mhm,
they
mhm.
were traveling in packs. And one of the rules I had was that the imposter couldn't had to have like a cooldown time, just like in the game you have like a 30-second cooldown time. Oh, we made it 15, so it would so they couldn't just go up and then massacre everybody.
Mhm.
Well, because of that group, I was like, let's get rid of that rule. You have, oh, let me. I'm talking to you. Well, I'll just say this. So you have no cooldown time. So the first time I said that, uh, I'm walking around with the camera trying to catch, trying to make like a hype video. So I'm trying to follow different people around, and I know who the imposter is because I pick them, and so I try to follow them, but without them noticing that I'm following the imposter. And so I'm going off filming someone else, and I come around the corner, and I swear there was 11 students that were massacred in one spot because they were basically migrating in at the same stations. And once I told them the imposter could take out without any cool time, she went crazy. She just went. It was a massacre. If it was real life, there's no. It was bad.
CNN. CNN.
So, uh, which so in the game on your phone or wherever you play, you can report bodies like someone's that's fallen or whatever. I passed out whistles. They all came in their individual packets, so it wasn't like I might pick a whistle out of this bowl, and that's how they report the body. And then I had a red buzzer in the fellowship hall that would call for a meeting, and so every time someone would see a dead body, they would blow their whistle, and then everybody would come back and see in the meeting room and have the meeting discuss what they saw and who they think it was. And
Mhm.
it was actually really fun, and I think the students enjoyed it. And I was worried that it wasn't like when you get into these meeting times that it wasn't going to be like what you see on your phone, but it absolutely turned into that. They were like accusing people that had no. They were just like he's just acting weird. So we have a student. His name's Jackson. They picked on him every time, and every time someone would end up. They would find a body, they would be like, it was Jackson. And Jackson, I never picked Jackson until the end. I was just like, man, leave this kid alone. And for some reason, I just kept picking him over and over every time. So poor guy couldn't even finish the game because every time they would meet for the first time, he would be voted out, and he would basically sit down and eat cookies. Like he never got to go through all the different things. And a funny story from that is that the last round, um, so how I would pick them, I would make them close their eyes, face the wall, and I would hand them a unsharpened pencil, and that's what we used as the weapon. Uh, so instead of uh, I had three imposters at this time because we had like 14 students. So three imposters make it go faster. Instead of giving it to the students, I gave one to Keith. I kept one for myself, and I gave one to Amanda. So we were just walking around, and they were all, and they're like, "We don't know who it is. We just don't know." And uh, finally, we got them all, and we all met in the meeting room. They're like, "Who was it?" And I was like, "It was us." And they're all mad because we were just walking around like nobody's business, and doing the thing. So and that worked really well. And if you want that, the the I guess the layout of the game, I want to say it's ministry2youth.com. And they even have, uh, after I bought the game a couple of months ago, they came out with like curriculum to base that game around, uh like a 3-week series, I believe. So I haven't really looked into that, but we might look into that once spring break's over. So um and then after that, they just went to bed. We have showers at the church. uh Not enough showers, so they actually loaded up in a 15 passenger van and went to my mom's house and showered there real fast and came back. My mom only lived like 10 minutes from the church, so uh, it was a simple fix. I know if we did this for youth camp, if we were going to do youth camp in person, trying to like, uh, what would be the proper word? Uh, Rig up a shower for people to
Mm,
use, and uh,
mhm.
in February, or it was the first weekend of March. Uh, Outside showers just might not be a good idea, especially that weekend. It actually did get really cold on Saturday night. So uh yeah, you have any questions on that?
No, I mean, all the feedback that I heard from you, just even talking about the game before, and then I know my kids, they're almost youth age. They love the game digitally, and then they play in the backyard. So, I mean, I think it was a hit. So,
I boxed everything up, so if anybody's in the area that wants to like maybe give it a try, I can definitely pass that on, as long as you bring it back. Because we put a lot of work into being able to reuse everything. Like
mhm.
things are laminated, things are labeled, and all that stuff. So I don't mind sharing that, if you don't want to spend. I think it was like $25 online, uh, which it is what it is. So I got all the stuff for the each station boxed up and thrown in my office right now. Uh, yeah, you don't want to see my office. So uh, then we had our everybody went to bed. We started Saturday morning. Uh, just like they had their quiet time, and we had a session 2, which Keith brought the message again, and then a worship. And after each session, they had their group discussions, just like you would at like youth camp or something.
Mhm.
Uh, I guess I could mention our group leaders. So Keith had an intern over the summer, and I guess if she's going to be the intern this summer too. Her name was McKenna. We called her McKinta. Uh, I called her that, and then it turned out that Keith calls her that too. I don't know why I call her McKinta, but it just happens to be that way. Um, and I can't say. I think without she might be one of the best group leaders I've ever uh, had.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, Over the years, we've had a lot come through and uh, done great jobs. But I think McKenna, just because of her heart for the youth ministry,
Mhm.
really, really made the weekend for the girls. And
Mhm.
they they were already saying, "Well, we'll see you next year." Like I was gonna already like, oh, we. So now it's like, do I need to ask her to come back? And and then she had her boyfriend. His name was Jake, and again, uh, I always worry about the guys because they don't communicate as much. Uh, they're just a quiet group, and that's just the way.
Yeah.
Even as guys, you grow up, you still don't communicate well.
Mhm.
But he got him to talk, and he said none of them were quiet, and they all basically bonded. And Jake just did a and I remember when I met with him on Friday night before everything started. I was like, "Hey, if you get these kids to talk and respond to things, just let me know what you did because I've been working a hard time to try to get these kids to do
Yeah.
this." And he did it, and he did a great job. He had a great mustache, uh, uh, he- and and later on Saturday, I mean, he just I don't know if that guy might considered youth ministry as a occupation, and I didn't tell him that because things got kind of wild at the end of the weekend. But I think he might have a calling if he hasn't already. Uh, and he lives in Fort Worth. They both live in Fort Worth, not Fort Worth, Lubbock. Uh, I thought she went to Texas Tech, but she didn't. So she goes to TLU, I believe. Uh, and he's a mechanic, a diesel mechanic, I believe. So, but they both did great jobs, and they led
Yeah.
the groups, and the kids responded well to them. It was great. We'll get
And I think obviously that is so important, because as youth pastors, we want to make sure and know that these students are they know Jesus, and then B, they're growing in their faith. And like Jacob said, you sometimes you don't know, and you can't. I mean, you don't always have the time to have those each and individual conversations. But when you do things like a Disciple Now weekend, and you bring in people that are really engaging, not from the speaker perspective, but just from a small group perspective, and he can just tease out some of those things that we may not get to hear on a Sunday morning or a Sunday night or a Wednesday at Bible study, but they just get in there and pull it out, and it's so, and then it builds more cohesion in your group too, right? Because those guys know that that's a safe place, and those girls know it's a safe place that they can talk about, Jesus with, and life.
yeah. I mean, they. I just. Well, I'll get more into like how great they were. But we did our sessions, and then um, because the way we had it set up is that I let them sleep in a little bit later than we typically would because I had time that I needed to fill w- with not enough like ideas to do. So they woke up late. So by the time they finished their group discussion, they had a little bit of outside like they would play. They actually got really big into ultimate frisbee, which was shocking because a lot of these kids aren't the athletic kind, but they were all out there, and that's credit to Jake. Jake brought a frisbee and was out there playing, taught them how to play ultimate, and they just kept. I mean, they played, and then they went to lunch. Uh, just the
Cool.
typical D now stuff. And then uh, after lunch, I'm trying to think. Yeah, uh, we did what I called Fear Factor, and this was like as a youth minister, gross things are like what you do. I've never been so grossed out by on picture on paper. I thought, man, this is fun. This is gonna be fun. Not gonna be a problem. But once they started doing these things, man, it was the worst. I I can't believe some of the things that they did because it's supposed to be like, okay, well, if you do this, you get the points, and then if you don't, and it's okay if you don't get any points. But they were not afraid to do any of it. One of the
It's
games
awesome.
and I'll share this if anybody's interested. But one of the games was kind of like a hot potato situation. So I toasted a piece of toast in one of those toasters that pop up, and then I put it on a plate, and I put a bunch of condiments out, like ketchup and mayonnaise and mustard and barbecue sauce, some sardines, some whipped cream, all this different stuff. And so the game was that basically you go in this big circle and you put on a little bit of whatever condiments on this piece of toast. And I put another piece of toast in the toaster, and once that piece popped out of the toaster, whoever was standing there putting condiments on the other piece of toast had to take a bite. And I tell you, I thought they were gonna freak out. All of them were getting nervous as the time went by. Something happened with my toaster where it got kind of stuck, so I had to like nudge it to pop up. Uh, but without a beat, this kid picked up this toast and took the biggest bite and didn't even like gag or anything. I had trash cans set up everywhere and he didn't skip a beat. He just took a big bite. And I asked him this past Sunday, I was like, how did you do that? And he's like, well, it wasn't really bad until I bit into the sardine. And he said it got pretty rough after that, but ultimately it wasn't that bad. I was like, that's disgusting. Because I mean, by the time of it, I bet the thing was like, I don't know, 6 inches just towered with condiments, and it looked terrible. And I have it all on video too, so hopefully I'll have that out this weekend too. But it was the worst. We had what we called like Twinkie roulette. We had Twinkies that had squid or oysters, and then one of them had a gummy worm, and whoever got the gummy worm obviously won. But everything else had like raw hot dogs and Spam, and it was. I was shocked how well they responded, and I was worried that someone would be like, "Oh, I'm not doing this," but they did really well. When I do it again for a regular D now, probably not, because it took a lot of prep, and two, it was gross.
Well, and I think that's one of those things that you did it because just trying to figure out how to stay on the property there and make it happen, and it worked.
Yeah, it worked, and I think if maybe like a retreat type thing like later on, but Disciple now, probably not, unless COVID keeps us, or something, not COVID, but something else comes along and keeps us stuck at one place, then yeah. But I'll definitely keep it in my folder, but not something I think I would do multiple times. Mainly,
did you
yeah.
did you get a Happy Meal and blend it up?
Oh yeah. I actually, so this is actually a funny story. I got the kids meal, opened it up, and without thinking about it, so I got chicken nugget kids meal, and without thinking about it, I picked up a chicken nugget, took a bite out of it, and threw it in the blender. So and I was sitting there thinking like, well, crap, I can't give this to kids. I took a bite out of it, blended it. Now my germs are in this thing, so I had to take it off, dump it out, wash it out, and then luckily I had bought like 3 other kids meals, and I blended it all. I think, other than the Twinkie thing, I think that's the people that did the blender, the kids meal blender thing. I think that was the worst one.
Well, see, I've done the cheeseburger, apples, French fries, and Coke, and it smells like vomit. How does the chicken nugget smell?
No, it made me gag, and I can handle smells because of my secular job, but this was bad, and what made it worse is that when I mixed it, there wasn't enough liquid in there to make it liquid. It was kind of chunky, and it kind of reminded me of hot dogs before they go into the
Oh yeah,
the sleeve. And I was like, ooh. And it did stink, and it was terrible, but they ate it down.
oh gosh,
I think one girl did throw up, but
I remember this was at a different church. Little 8th grader, man, she just it's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
Wow. So
So
yeah, definitely keeping that in the folder, but not something that's gonna be on top of the folder. Like
there you go.
called it Fear Factor, and it worked, but not my favorite thing we've ever done. Uh, then we had a little break, and this one worked out. This was probably my favorite part of the weekend. Is so we had one night. So original plan was to have. So we have this guy. His name is Pastor Nava, that runs the soup kitchen. Like it's a soup kitchen type homeless shelter there in Bastrop. And he has this really amazing backstory. Like he comes from the streets of LA, and he looks like it. I mean, he's not like this, you know, pastor looking guy. He looks and walks like what you would imagine an LA gangster would look like. And but the one of the nicest people. He does a lot for the community. Actually, he was one of the first people to respond to the snowstorm and pass out water and food. Opened up his facilities past what capacity could, so people had place to go. I mean, he's just a generally good guy. He does Christmas drives. Um, Actually, he calls uh, it's he has this funny Santa name that it's like Chico Claus or something. It's really funny, but just a generally good guy, good backstory, how he found Jesus and what he's doing with it now. But he ended up getting called away to do a speaking gig in like Houston or something. So in the same day, I was scrolling through Instagram, and this random girl popped up in my suggestion box, and I noticed that she was friends with my wife, and I was like, okay. I was like, who is this? Like, why is she popping up on mine? And it turned out she had this amazing story and because of what we were talking about, I was like, this is perfect. This is probably better than what Pastor Nova was going to do. And so she came and she gave her testimony. Um, I mean, and when I say, I mean, it might have not impacted the students as much as I wanted, but the adults and the band and everybody around that kind of understood like the struggles of somebody that went through the stuff she did really got something out of it. Like they're asking me for the video of it, and we have video, but we had some audio issues. So I have Jeremy and his guys are trying to fix it. I have Garrett and his guys trying to fix the audio because it was that good. And after she gave her testimony, we had like a question, like basically like a discussion, and the discussion went extremely well. And she just, I mean, just her energy that she put off by what God did in her life, I think was super impactful. And man, the story that she gave and what she's doing now with her life. I mean, she was arrested over like 20 times for drug stuff, and she went to rehab, and now she's like basically ministry, like she's opened up a ministry to people that were in the same case that she was in. And she's just, I mean, it's just a really good story, and she did really well at it. And then she hung out with us afterwards, and this is where things kind of went uh uh that's when we got the news about, well, we got the news earlier in the day with my mother-in-law uh in the middle of D-Now. So uh I had to get to a point where I could basically set up and leave. And that's what we got to that point, and then that's when I kind of just took a break and stepped back for a little bit, and it's like, what do I need to do? I gave you a call. It's like, I don't know, like I know I need to be there, but I know if I did leave, she would be mad. It's just one of those situations like, hey, what do I do? Because I want to be there, and I want to be there for my wife. But this event's going on, and that we put a lot of work into. And I think that's what we're talking about next week. Is about who do you uh, who do you turn to when you need help as a youth pastor, and when do you put your family, like when do you pull that trigger on it's ministry, but your family needs to come first in this situation. So be on the lookout for that one. But I did make the decision to set it up to where I was leaving and going to Georgetown. I put everybody in, and this is where I think if there's anybody else there that weekend, that it wouldn't have been possible. But I think God had the right people, including the band. The band stepped up to not just do band stuff, but they took over the live stream. They actually tore everything down that night to be moved in. And then Keith stepped up as I know he's supposed to be a speaker, but he's a youth minister, and he did youth ministry stuff. Like, he took over there, and the group leaders just ultimately just. I asked a lot out of the group leaders than I typically wouldn't, and they really took over and helped, and to where I could. Ultimately, I didn't leave to go to Georgetown because of visitation times, and my wife ended up coming home for the night. So I did leave to go home to be with her as she, processed and did all this stuff. But Keith basically took over and led the rest of the weekend. I watched as I drove home, or I would say listened as I drove home. To Keith, and again, he just did a great job, especially in the time where things were not good for me and my wife and her sisters and all that stuff. So again, God had those people there and I really don't think, other than you being there personally, I don't think anybody else could have just taken over where we were at. And it was awesome to see. And once I left, I felt good and never really looked back. Because I'm a control freak. I want to make sure everything's going right, and but this was a situation I couldn't control, and I had to be there for her, and with the people here, they really made me be able to where I was able to be. So and so I went home the night we did cut some things out because of they were in my head and not theirs, which was fine. It ultimately worked out to where, because they were all tired and they went to bed, but I was able to I was able to go to bed. Oh, I didn't really mean to fall asleep, but I went to bed early for the first time on a DNOW weekend. Other than that one year where I got the stomach bug, that was a terrible year. But I got to spend time with my wife and be with her while she was dealing with the situation. So, and then I got up the next morning and was able to go to church and finish the weekend out. And then it was a good weekend. Things worked out the best we could with the COVID situation, to where we didn't leave campus. I don't think I ever want to do that again, because it's as much as it sounds like it's a simple thing to do without having to organize ways to get students around. It's hard to organize something to where the students are busy constantly. So I'm praying that we don't have to do that again, but we have a plan now that if it does, then we know what we need to do. So
there you go.
Hopefully 2022 we can go back to the folder of regular DNOW, where they go out and do things in the community, and I'll keep those to myself for now. But yeah, that was our Disciple Now 2021. It went really well. The t-shirts came out really well. I'll wear one next week.
Right before the episode, I was like, I should have packed my Hands of Love t-shirt. What was I thinking?
Well, mine's dirty. I actually wore mine this on Sunday for the funeral, and the funeral was all graveside, so I was nervous because it was my first funeral to officiate. Like I guess you could call it officiate, and I was sweating. So in a black shirt, I was like, well, I'll just put it on real fast. Well, because I was sweating, there was like a white stain across the side. I was like, probably not the best look. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and we'll talk probably more about what we more detail about this what happened last week, and because we do, I thought it was a perfect question when I said who do we turn to? As pastors, it's easy to get distracted on like, oh, you got to carry the world, but when we need to turn to somebody, who do we turn to?
Yeah.
And then you brought up the question, when do we pull that trigger to put family before the ministry? Which I hope you weren't taking like something at me about that, but
No, just no. Generally speaking,
yeah,
because I think that's something that all of us struggle with. I know many. I've heard the story. Even just in the secular. Dad always worked. That's Dad was never around because he was always working. Well, I think that spills over into the pastorate too. Dad was always working. Dad was always at the church. Dad was whatever. But I think there are times in our ministry when sometimes our family obviously should come first, and how do you weigh that?
yeah.
So just a good something to think about, and I think we're going to dive into that next week though, right?
Yes, sir. And we'll have a guest with us next week. I don't know who we just decided on yet, but I know Jeremy's in contact with them through the email.
Yep.
If you would like to be on the next on a episode, you can email us at youthpastors or pastors2 at gmail.com, right?
That's right.
I don't think we have a Facebook yet, but I know that's in the works. It's now that we have some media art and all that stuff. Anything else we need to add before we wrap this one up?
Well, are we going to end it the way we always end it?
Oh yeah. Crazy story. So, do you have a crazy story?
I don't know if it's crazy, but at the moment it boggled my mind. The lead pastor at the time, and I was the youth pastor. He said, we don't have a screen option in the sanctuary, so we need TVs. And so I said, okay. And he says, I want you to present a plan to the finance committee, and then we'll get the TVs. And I was just like, okay. And so I went and presented this plan for 2 TVs to be hung, and it was going to project the lyrics on, and it was going to be, we could use it for videos if we wanted to show videos. And I presented this full plan, and the committee just kind of looked at me like this, deer in the headlights, like, why do we know what? I left that meeting knowing for certain that we were not getting the TVs that I just presented, and I just worked hard to present. And about 5 minutes later, the pastor comes out and says, all right, go get them TVs. Let's put them up. What? We went and got the card or whatever, and bought the biggest ones he could find at the time. And they got hung. And, I think they're still hanging in the church today. So pretty cool.
Yeah. What was the last song you listened to that you did purposely listen to?
On purpose, I listened to Luke Combs' Better Together. I don't know if I really like Luke Combs. I'm probably, my default is country. I obviously listen to a ton of Christian music, but Better Together, just kind of reminds me of my spouse and I. We are better together, and I like that guy's voice too. So you like Luke Combs?
Yeah, and his story how he got famous is pretty good too. He was a Viner.
He didn't pick up a guitar till he was like 26 or something.
Yeah, he was just playing on Vine. That's how he was a comedian on Vine, and then he started singing, and then he got really big. So
yeah, Vine's a platform that died. That's for those of you who don't know. It kind of like kind of like a
TikTok.
Snapchat-ish. No, yeah, I guess
It's
TikTok.
it's like TikTok now.
Yeah.
But crazy story for me. Man, I got hundreds of them. I just don't know which one to go to. Uh, I'll tell you about the time I left kids behind. So every time I try to before school starts, I try to do one last thing, and most of the time that revolves around things that I want to do. So I just pack them up and we go somewhere. And this particular summer, decided to go float the river in San Marcos, not San Marcos, but New Braunfels. And so I'm like, all right, everybody get here by 8:30. If you're not there by 8:30, you're not going because we're already be on the road.
Yeah.
So I pick up a 15 passenger van. We get back there. Everybody's there by 8 o'clock. I'm like, heck yeah. So let's get out of here early. We'll get down there early. Get to New Braunfels, get onto the river. We float it for a couple hours. I come back to my phone because I left it in the van, and I had 15 or 16 missed calls. And turns out that I had left 2 students at the church that were inside. That had just went inside to use the bathroom before we left, and I didn't realize that they were there because they didn't tell me they were coming.
Oh man.
I remember talking to them when they got there, but then they went inside, and we took off without them, and that's actually the first time I ever got in trouble but if I was going to leave students behind, might as well leave them at the church.
That's the best place to leave them.
Not a gas station or something else. But that was the first time I felt so bad. I was like, look, guys, I will come and next weekend I'll take you to the float the river. Like I was heartbroken and sad because I did that, but man, it was a learning experience. Now I take head count. I'll check the buildings before we leave, especially for like youth camp or something. So, and the last song I listened to was intentionally was from Shane and Shane's live Psalms live album, which by the way is my favorite album right now. That's including David Crowder and all the rest of the people I typically listen to. This is and it's been out for a long time, but it's just so good. But it's Psalms 46, Lord of Hosts. It's such a great song. The whole Psalms thing that Shane and Shane does is awesome. Basically take the word from the Bible and turn it into songs, and I use that a lot for students so they can comprehend better. Some people just listen to music better than just reading. So that was the last song I looked up, and I listen to at least once a day. It's such a great song, and talking about being in the fires, like the Meshach and all them in the fire and stuff like that. It's really good. So if you need to listen to it, go ahead, look it up. It's a Psalms live album on Apple. That's what I use. But it's Psalms 46. So yeah,
something for me to look up tomorrow.
Yeah, I recommend listening to the whole album. And really, if you don't know who to listen to, Shane and Shane, no matter what kind of mood you're in, is a place to go. They do this worship initiative stuff that it basically takes every worship song and they break it down. So people like me that don't worship, like aren't worship leaders, can take it and learn from it and lead later on. That's what I'm working on now, is to start leading worship on Wednesday nights. And that's what I use. So really good program with that. But Shane and Shane, always a good place to go.
No doubt. Well, listen, you want to do this again next week?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it again next week then.